Hello, Ted here from Whole Latte Love. We have a Gaggia Accademia here, and we're going to show you how to remove the casing that's around the machine so you can get to a possible hinge that you need to repair, or if you have a leaking, what's called a blowdown valve. This will help you get to that and resolve those problems.
Need some tools for this guy.
We do. We don't need a lot. Just to remove this casing, there's only one tool you'll need, and it's a T10 Torx screwdriver. It's a little star-shaped thing, and that's all you're going to need.
Okay.
Just to remove the casing. So the first thing you got to do is empty your water tank, take it out. You got this yellow flap right here. You're going to want to tape that down because there's a little spring here, and it will go flying after you try to remove the top. So my trick is to add a piece of tape to it and then push it down and tape it against that wall. So now you ain't got to worry about it.
Don't have to worry about that.
Don't have to worry about a thing. So we're going to take off the bean hopper lid.
Should we have beans out of the machine too?
Yes, definitely make sure if you have, this one's apparently empty, but if you have a full bean hopper, you got to clear that out of there before trying to remove the top of the machine, because once you do, all the beans are going to fall inside.
Do we need to note our grind setting as well?
We do need to note our grind setting. Wherever you have your grind setting, you can either jot it down, memorize where this arrow is pointing, take a picture, whatever you got to do to make sure you put this dial back in the correct spot when we put the top back on. Because once we take the top off, that dial will now move freely if you accidentally bump it.
Okay.
And you just need to make sure that it goes right back in the same spot before you put it back on.
All right.
So now we got to remove the 4 screws to the top of the machine. There's 2 on either side, one front, one back, underneath both lids. And we're just going to take those out. These are all the same kind of screws, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up.
Any screw in any hole, right? Up here?
Yep.
Okay.
Most of these screws will all be identical, any of them that we take off. So
that makes life a little easier.
It does. So we got that one out. And last but not least, this one.
Okay.
So set those aside, make sure you don't lose them. If you lose them, hopefully you don't.
Yeah.
So on this side, you got this ridge right here, and we gotta remove this side of the housing, upper housing first. You can't pull up on this side without removing this side. So here is a slot down in here, in front of my finger. I hope you can see.
It's a little dark in there, but
there's a little slot opening. And you can use like some kind of bent pick or something with a bend where you can push on it, and that'll help you pop this free.
But you've got a trick.
I have my own thing. I don't need a tool for it. I just grab this little ridge right here with both hands, and I kind of tweak and pull up at the same time.
Oh, look how easy
it's moving the tab away from the thing that's holding in place.
Okay.
You don't have to worry about breaking it. You see how easy I can pop it up.
Yep.
Okay. Now that it's popped up, we're going to flip both lids up, so I can grab it back here and kind of wiggle this housing off.
And be gentle with those lids, right?
Yeah, you don't want to break the hinges. They can break it easy. I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it, just enough to hold it. And you wiggle it free, and the only reason you got to wiggle it free is because this adjusting thing is attached to this.
Okay. Your grind adjuster.
Yep. And sometimes it doesn't want to come off right off the bat, so you just wiggle it free. Now you got 3 wires connected here to the top of the machine. You got your cup tray, which just pulls off.
Just pulls off, easy.
Your ground connection with a little prong there that you have to push down and then pull the connector back. So we're going to push and pull.
That little
thing right there that sticks out.
Kind of compress
you got to push it down and then pull the connector.
Get it loose, okay.
And then the sensor for the bean hopper lid is just in a slot that you just pull out.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to close the lids and set that off to the side. Now, 4 more screws and we can open up this machine. You can see everything inside of it. So you got 4 screws, one here, one here, there, and over here.
Conveniently at each corner.
Conveniently in each corner. Now, once you remove these screws, having a magnetic tip one is nice. You may see the panel drop a little bit.
Okay.
That's normal. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Get that.
Are these the same size screws as the other ones?
Yep, these are identical screws.
Oh, I like that so much.
Makes life a little bit easier so you don't have to worry about keeping track of what screw goes where. which I've had my fair share of. So now we got the 4th screw out. Let's set those aside. This side panel, easy to pop off. All you gotta do is open the door.
Open the door.
Drop it down.
Oh, wow, that was easy.
So now that it's out, there's a ground wire that's connected to it, just like the top. It's got a little prong on it that you push in, and you pull the connector back.
Okay.
Now your side panel is free. Close the door. This side doesn't really drop easily.
Okay.
Real trick. Just use your hand.
just kinda
If you don't want to use your
slap the
hand,
top,
just
man.
like get a rubber hammer or something like that and just tap it nicely.
Okay.
It'll just pop down. There's like these tabs that just slide and lock into place.
Okay.
And the screws help keep them in the up position. Same thing here, you got a ground connection. Gonna push and pull. Okay?
Is there going to be a ground connection on the back panel too?
No, there's not
Okay.
going to, it's only on the 2 side panels for some reason. I don't know.
And there's one up top as well.
For the top,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
So after you get the side panels off, the back panel,
Just, whoa.
just pull
So
it back.
easy. Okay.
It's got these little tabs that lock in at the bottom, and then this thing here just kind of rests on a thing up here. So the side panels is actually what kind of helps hold it into place.
Okay. Okay.
And that's how you open up the machine. All right, now that you have the case open, I'm gonna show you how to replace the brew pump, specifically the brew pump. There's another pump in the back of this machine, but in my experience, I think I've maybe replaced 5 of them in all the repairs I've ever done. So we're not really gonna focus on that one. We're gonna focus on the brew pump. So what you're gonna need to do this job is you're gonna need these, you should already have a T10 screwdriver out to open up the machine, as you already have done. A flat blade screwdriver, that's just gonna help you pry things off the pump and whatnot. A 12 millimeter wrench, that's to help you put it on the neck of the pump to remove the elbow once we get to that point. A little pick or something that'll help you get the what's called the thermal fuse out of the pump, which I'll show you in a bit also. And then the pinch clamp tool. And then you're gonna need a pinch clamp. You might wanna grab a couple just as a backup in case you drop one, ruin it, whatever it may be. You just need one to do the actual work,
But
so having a couple extra might be handy. And then you're gonna need a pump. So you'll order a pump and a clamp, and then just make sure you have these kind of tools, and you should be able to do the job.
Okay.
So we're gonna show you how to do that. So with the casing all off and everything, we're gonna turn this machine around, make sure it's unplugged. Of course, not hot or anything like that, but by the time you take the casing off, it shouldn't be that hot anyway. If it is hot and it was just on or whatever, you might want to wait for the boilers to cool down, so while you're working in here with hands, you're not gonna ouch yourself with the heat on the boiler.
Sure.
So this is the pump right here. This is the brew pump. This pump is the steam hot water pump, which we're not gonna worry about. But if you ever have to change that, it's right here, and it's pretty easy to do. As you can see, it's got a pinch clamp here and a hose connector here and some wires. Remove all that, put that one in, and then you're good to go.
But we got some stuff in the way here, yeah?
Yeah, the brew pump, we have to move this support right here on the back of the machine out of the way so we can at least get to the pump. In order to do that, first thing I do is I remove this cover on the board here, and that's just to get to the connector, the 3 wires that are coming from this to here, so I can then remove this and have that connector and wires come with it.
Okay.
So we're gonna undo this cover for the power board back here with these 2 screws. Get those out, set them aside, and then you got these clips around the board. There's one down here, but I'm only gonna worry about this one, and just kind of lift them up and pull it out.
Easy.
Now that we have it out, we have this connector right here, which is coming from here. It's the only one we need to worry about. So I'm just gonna pull these 3 wires out of those grooves that they're sitting in,
Yep.
and then grab the 3 wires, wiggle, and pull it off.
Okay.
Now that it's out of the way, I can go after these 2 screws that are holding the bottom of this mount in place. Now you're gonna have to go, if you have a shorter screwdriver than what I have, it might be a little bit easier for you. But I've always used this screwdriver, so I know how to use it, but we kind of have to go on an angle because they're straight underneath this.
Sure.
But they're not over tightened, they're not glued, they're not whatever. So even if you're on a slight angle like I am, you're still gonna be able to unscrew it and get it out of there. Same thing with this side here. Go after that screw and back that one out. and get it out of there. So now that we got those 2 screws out, the wire unplugged, that removed, I'm gonna lift up a little bit with this and kind of pull down on that, and then I'm gonna pull this towards me at the same time.
Now, what did you're lifting up on the?
Just you can see how I can lift this portion of the machine up.
Yep.
Where basically there's 2 pegs that are in a hole.
Okay.
So, and they're not real big, they're just enough.
Just enough to
So I'm gonna lift up, and while holding this, I'm gonna lift and pull, and then I'm gonna pull back.
Okay. Oh, those are the 2 little pegs there that you're trying to clear.
Yep.
Okay.
They're just sitting into 2 holes.
Gotcha.
So by doing this lift, push, and pull,
Okay.
you're gonna pop that right out like that.
Okay.
Now that that happened, you can actually lift it, wiggle it out of here,
And just get it out of the.
and then you have 1 wire, which is a ground wire, attached to these 4 connectors back here. There's a little ground connection area. There's 4 wires attached to it.
Okay.
I'm just gonna remove it. I'm gonna use my long screwdriver. I'm gonna push on that little pin that holds the connector in. That one right there that my screwdriver is pushing on.
Yep.
And then I'm gotta get back on there, I can't see. And pull up on the connector.
Okay. And that.
You don't need to push it back real hard, you just need to push it enough. If you push it back too far, that little guy right there, you can actually bend that prong back.
Okay.
It's not gonna hurt anything, you can push it back this way, and once you get it out, if you push it too far, that helps hold the connector in there. Not that it's gonna fall out because it's going down anyway, but. So we got that, and now we can just set that off the side. We don't need to worry about that at the moment. Now we can get to the pump a little bit, and the one other thing I do is this 3-pin connector going to what's called the flow meter. I get this wire out of my way, and I just wiggle that and pull it off of there, and I just kind of pop it up in this tank holder area.
Get it out of the way.
Just to have it out of my way.
Okay.
And now you can just kind of move some of these wires up like that, and now you can see the pump.
Beautiful. A little more access there?
A little bit more access. So first thing we need to do is we need to pop this elbow off of the inlet on the pump. It's just a rubber elbow. I get behind it with my flat blade screwdriver, like that, and I just kind of work it off.
Just by turning your screwdriver so the blade's kind of levering it off for
Once
you.
it gets to a point like that, you can just basically wiggle it off like this.
Okay.
Now, if you have any water in your system, you might get some drips out of this. You might get some drips out of the pump, whatever it may be. Don't worry about it, it's not gonna hurt anything.
Okay.
So now we got that elbow off. We got this rubber mount going over the neck of the pump.
Yep.
I'm gonna get behind the rubber mount, and I might have to pull a little bit and get behind there like that. And I'm just gonna tweak on it by moving the screwdriver back and forth to get it to pop off that neck.
Okay.
So now that that's happened, I can kind of just tweak the elbow or the pump out towards me. I'm gonna get down on my knee here for a second, because now we need to kind of turn this pump towards us like that,
Okay.
so we can see the wires. We're gonna disconnect the wires, and my trick for removing these 2 is use my flat blade screwdriver, get behind the connector like this, my thumb here, and kind of
Lever it off.
just kind of pull like that.
Now, is it going to make a difference where those wires go when we put them back?
No, not really, but
Okay.
what my rule of thumb is, this wire here, which was right there, is closest to that, what's called the thermal fuse.
Okay.
So when you put the thermal fuse back in, just put that
Okay.
one
That's
right
kinda
next to it
makes
back
sense.
where it goes.
Yeah. Okay.
And then this guy just goes by itself over
Okay.
here. So this connector closest to the thermal fuse with this wire.
Their thermal fuse is the blue covered.
This
thing.
blue cover
Yeah.
fuse is covered in super glue or hot glue.
Hot glue. Okay.
You can work the
So
glue
you
off
just-
with your finger if you want,
Which you just did.
which I just did. Sometimes it's not that easy. I
Okay.
saw that it wasn't, like sometimes it's really gooped up around there and it's really hard. If you can't get the glue off, it's not a big deal, because you can use like my little pick that I have here. There's usually, actually there is every time, a space behind the fuse back here in that little slot that it's sitting in.
Yep.
And I put my pick behind here, in behind that fuse,
And kind of lever it out.
and just kind of pry it back like that. And you can see that the fuse is popped out like that. It'll do that with the hot glue on there also,
Okay.
because it will pop the hot glue off the casing here
Okay.
also.
Okay.
So if you can't pull the glue off, just use that little leverage trick that I just did, and your fuse will come right out of there.
Okay.
So now that those are out of the way, I kind of just trying to figure out where I can put them for now. Just tuck them out of the way. so they're not in my way of getting the pump out.
Okay.
Now that we've done all that, we got one more thing we have to do, and we can pull the pump out.
Okay.
And that one last thing is to go after, I'm sorry, we're gonna pull this water line off so I can get that out of my way also.
Okay.
You see this right here?
Yep.
That's the water line going to the pump.
Yep.
We need to cut that clamp. So that's where the pinch clamp tool comes into place. We're gonna use my left hand and I'm gonna push that towards me like this.
Just so you can get at it.
So it comes out this side, so I can get my pinch clamps. And if yours are smaller than this, great, because you'll have a little bit more work, or less work to do so. And you're gonna get on that clamp, and I'm gonna put my claws on the top and bottom of that pinched metal area.
Yep.
I'm gonna put it on there, and I'm going to squeeze down once I got a hold of it, and cut that clamp.
Okay. There's what came off. Okay.
Now with that cut, I can take my flat blade screwdriver, push this back towards me, and kind of go behind that cut area and kind of move this clamp around a little bit and get it to separate. You might have to keep it from moving back and forth on you. You might have to reach in with your finger like I just did and get behind there as best as you can. This one's being a pain in my butt. Basically what I'm trying to do is just open up this clamp a little bit more, which I'm having a hard time doing.
But this is real life, right?
This is definitely real life. Usually it's not that difficult. There we go. So I got behind it.
Yep.
And I'm just separating it out like that, like a little bit.
Yep.
And I'll turn that towards me. I'll put my screwdriver out of the way. I'll just turn it towards me like that. And grab that part I just separated with my pliers and just pull it.
Perfect. Okay.
So now that with that cut off of there, we just need to pull the tube. If you have pliers, that might make it a little bit easier, but basically you can just work that tube off the inlet here on the elbow.
Okay.
Now with that out of the way, the last thing is to work it out of this other rubber mount that's just like this one.
Yep.
It's got an opening that the neck goes through. We're gonna push on that rubber mount with our fingers or whatever we can get on there. As you're pulling on the pump, you're gonna pull and twist until it starts popping out.
Okay.
And eventually you're gonna get to the elbow.
Oh, yeah, there's an elbow on there. That's gonna be.
Which then, once you get past the white part of the neck, you can just
pull it out.
Twist it out of the way.
Because this elbow's kind of small.
Yeah, it's smaller than the neck, so once you get the neck past the opening, you can just maneuver it around and out of there.
Okay.
So there's your pump. We got that far. We can finish it off now.
Okay.
So we're gonna remove this elbow. There's a slot on either side of this neck on the elbow here. A 12mm wrench fits right on there.
Okay.
It might be a little snug depending on your thickness of your wrench, because some wrenches are slightly thicker than this, and that slot isn't as wide as some wrenches. So you might have to like force it on there, but it will go on there.
Okay.
Once you have it on there, you can just hold it like this, grab that inlet, and just unscrew it.
And that's just threaded in there, huh?
Yep. Okay. It's not like over tightened. I mean, it's plastic, so they're not going to crank on it.
Sure.
So once you get it loose, you can take your wrench off and then take that elbow off.
Okay.
Now the elbow has got a seal on here, so just make sure it's there.
Okay.
It should be. It doesn't need any glue. We're going to get the new pump. Now I will point out with the new pumps, sometimes they get dry locked from just sitting around. So if you have like an air compressor, you can force air through this inlet.
Okay.
You'll have like a squirt of water come out of it, but that'll make sure that these valves are not sealed up in here.
Okay.
Not that it's a huge problem, because if you have to, you can force prime it. Most of the time it's not seized up, but I always just do this before I put the pump in, so I don't have to worry about it.
Sure.
But if you don't have a way to do that, don't worry about it, we'll be fine. So we're gonna take this and we're just gonna thread it back on the elbow, making sure to get it lined up just right. You can feel the threads once they start threading in. Make sure it's not angled. You don't want to cross thread it or angle it, because then you're going to ruin the threads and you're going to need another pump.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
It's not going to help you. So we're just going to hand tight with that, and I'm not even going to use the wrench. I'm actually just going to use the neck and just snug that down.
Okay.
That seal is going to prevent the leaking.
Okay.
So if you over crank that, you're more liable going to ruin the threads on either this thing or the neck on the pump.
So you
just
don't have to go
till it
real
stops,
quick.
and that's it. Now, sometimes when you get that, the inlet might stop in a weird position like that. We need the inlet to point upwards like that, facing the same as the connectors.
Okay.
This neck spins around.
Oh.
So you can just turn it until you get it into
where you need it
general location. Never try to turn it back up because you're going to unthread it.
Okay.
So go to the right.
Always
if you have to reposition it, always go to the right.
Turn it clockwise.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're going to go with something like that.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be perfect. We just need it in the general location so we can get our hose back on there.
Okay.
So now that that's on, we're going to fish this back in. We're going to start putting this elbow into that opening.
That one way back there. Yeah.
And now I have the elbow in there. If you can look on the other side, you'll see that it's through. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yeah.
So now that it's through, I'm going to use my fingers. Oh, sorry if they get in your way. And I'm just going to push the pump and tweak it until it pops in.
Until it pops through. Okay.
And there's that slot on the pump back here. It's a very small groove
That it kind of sits in?
that the pump mount sits into it.
Okay.
And you'll feel it once it gets to that spot.
There. Okay.
Now that the pump is in place, we can reattach our water line. We're going to take a clamp.
That's going to be fun getting it in there.
This is tricky.
Okay.
But as long as you get the hose fish towards you like this,
okay.
you can grab that and put the clamp on there and just make sure you hold the clamp up high enough
so it doesn't fall off when you're sticking
with your
it back
finger.
on the...
And I need to find the inlet here, which is hard for me to do.
And I'm blocking a little, huh?
Oop, we're going to drop the clamp. I got it.
It is a tight spot.
It is tight. This is the hardest part about doing the pump job, is removing this and putting it back on.
Okay.
I'm just trying to find the inlet here, which has turned on me a little bit by putting that pump in there. So it's not sitting where I want it to with the connectors here facing up. All right, so now we got that corrected.
But you want that inlet going up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely want it going up.
Okay.
And you can see the inlet right there. Now that I can actually get a better look at it and push it on the inlet. And then you're going to keep pushing it on there until it's all the way down.
Okay, so make sure it's all the way down there.
And then this clamp is just going to kind of sit on there. We're going to grab our pinch clamp tools. This is a little snug, especially with my clamps. We're going to push that pump forward like we just did. And we're going to try to grab the pinch clamp in some fashion. And then once I get a hold of it, grab each side of that metal. And you're going to move it up about a 1/4 inch. It's hard for me to show you, but you don't want it all the way down to the bottom.
Right.
You want it up in about a 1/4 inch.
Okay.
And then pinch it as tight as you can get it.
Okay. So it should look like that when you're done, huh?
Yep.
Okay.
If you don't pinch that enough, it's going to allow water to leak around there.
We don't want
So
that.
squeeze that as hard as you can until you can't squeeze that anymore without cutting it off, of course.
Okay, yeah.
So now that that's done, the hard part's over.
Woohoo!
So now we got the pump in place. Before I pop it back in here, I'm going to turn the pump towards me so I can reattach my wires. I'm going to start with the fuse,
Which goes in that little slot, right?
which goes in here. Doesn't matter if it goes one way or the other. It just sits in there.
Okay.
Don't have to worry about adding glue to it. It's never really going to fall out of there.
Okay.
I've never had any of them fall out without hot glue on them. And then you're going to take that white wire connector that's next to the fuse and plug it in.
Yep.
Oop, I didn't have it in all the way. There we go. Now we're in all the way. And then the other wire, we're going to plug it right back into the other connector.
Okay.
After that, we're going to feed this portion back into the pump mount. And you're just going to get it lined in there, and you're going to have to work around the rubber here to get it snapped back into that little neck.
Okay.
Then you're going to take your elbow that's still sitting over here, and you're going to put it back onto the pump.
That's not really, that just presses on there because
Yep,
there's
it's just
no
a rubber-
pressure in there.
Nope.
That's the intake to the pump.
Yep, it just pushes right on there. Now you have the pump in place, we can put this back on.
Okay.
I'm going to feed this wire through underneath,
That ground wire, yes.
and you just kind of You can see it when you're working on the machine. I'm doing it by a side view at the moment. And I get it on that connector, and you just get it on there.
Okay.
Okay. So once you get that wire connected, we also need to reattach this wire before putting this back in here.
Okay.
So grab that wire to the flow meter, put it back on there, and then there's these two grooves right here. You just kind of fish those wires in there. It just kind of helps hold them in place. And then I kind of push this forward because you can see these 2 screw holes right here.
You're gonna have
is where this goes.
Yep.
So you need to make sure that this doesn't get pinched in between here.
Okay.
So you just kind of place that in there like that. You're going to do the same thing you did before when you lift up and push down, except you're going to push it in this time instead of pulling it out. You get that in there like that. Just check your wires, make sure they're not underneath. Make sure all this is kind of pushed back. It's not going to hurt anything. Take this, reattach it here, push it in there. The 3 wires go into these 3 grooves, blue one at the furthest, green in the middle, and black on the first one here. And then I'm going to feed these wires into that channel as much as I can, and they just kind of get snugged back there. Reposition these wires a little bit. And you might have to finagle with these ones. These ones always move around on me no matter what. It's a pain. So we just need to finagle these wires back in. They kind of just sit in little channels here, and they come through an opening, sometimes here, sometimes here. It doesn't really matter where they come out.
Okay.
So now that the wires are in there,
they stayed.
we're going to put this cover back on, this opening going over the heat distribution block. And we're going to just kind of line it up. Once we get it in the right spot, we can push it right in.
Make sure those tabs are going.
Sometimes this portion will stick out because of these wires.
Okay.
It's not a big deal. It's just a little bit, making sure this wire also is behind here. That's your water sensor for the tank. Now you got that on, you can put those 2 screws back in. And you also need to put these 2 screws in down here.
Okay.
So we're going to put those 4 in.
Those are all the same screws, right?
They're all T10 screws. These are the black ones. They're all normal screws used throughout the machine to install everything. Stainless steel screws are sometimes used specifically around areas that have water. So just keep track of what black or silver stainless steel screws go, but they're usually all T10, the majority of them. So we're going to put that one in, and again, just tighten these screws down until they stop. Because if you continue, you will strip the holes that the screws go into because they're plastic. So you just go until it stops. Now you've installed a new water pump for the Brew pump. At this point, you can reinstall the casing and test your machine out after you get it done. And one last thing, before you close up the machine, I've put all my screws in. We need to make sure that this rubber tube is reconnected to your tank holder. You want to make sure that's put in, because if you don't, you put your tank in, you're just going to pour water inside your machine. So this tube goes right on this little connecting spot here in between all of this. And it
Kind of
just,
in the center there?
yeah, it's right in the center of all of this. It's that one in the middle.
Okay.
Don't try to connect it to anything else. This one is actually a screw mount for that gray cap on the inside. So it's in the middle. If you ever have any question, you can actually look through the hole down here and see your finger go over it.
Okay.
So we're just gonna position that on there and just kind of push it up on there. Make sure it's just pushed up on there. So now your water line is reconnected. Now you can reattach your casing and all that other stuff. All right, so now we've completed the things that we want to do, replacing the hinge, the blowdown valve, whatever it may be. Now we need to put the housing back together so we can use the machine as a whole. So what we got to do is we got to put the side panels and the back panel on, and the easiest way to do so is by turning the machine around. I will mention that you're going to need to have the dredge drawer, at least the dredge drawer, if not both, the dredge drawer and the Brew group out of your way. So we have those set on the counter, and the only reason being is there's tabs on the left panel, the right panel if you're facing the machine, that have to go in, and it's hard to do with the dredge drawer in the way. So remove those, and we're going to turn the machine around so that the back of it is facing you. And this is going to be the easiest way to put these panels back on. First of all, you got to put the back panel on first. You have these 3 little tab clippy things that go into these 3 openings down here. You have this top part that goes into this thing right here.
Okay.
Okay, so you kind of just feed those 3 into the 3 openings, like so. And we're going to tilt this forward, and going to push those tabs in at the bottom, and then the top. And that's just going to sit there like that.
Okay.
Now this is where a magnetic tip screwdriver, Torx screwdriver, T10, is going to come in handy. I'm going to put a screw on there ahead of time. And then I'm going to take the panel for the one side of the machine that doesn't have the door notch in it. That's the door one.
That's the one, okay.
The side that has no door doesn't have a notch on it.
Okay.
And we're going to set it here. Now we got to hook our ground connector back onto this prong. And it's just a matter of getting it to start on there and pushing it down and connecting it. Now this is where it's not real tricky, but you got your 3 tabs here that go into the 3 openings here on the back panel. And as you do so, you got other tabs that are going to line up with other openings around the panel here. And it's a little hard to explain where it goes, but once you get it, see how this side panel went in the back? And you got to push in at the front here and push up. Now, if it doesn't want to go, there's one spot right here where a tab doesn't want to go in the hole. And if you're pushing up and you got these back tabs lined up and you kind of bat it, you'll see that the panel, let me try that again, will go up into where it's supposed to. And you'll know that by that front mount right here on the panel will be flush into the bottom of that hole for the screw to go into. If it's not sitting right, that won't be flush.
This hole right here, right?
This one right here in front of the screw hole for that mount.
Okay.
If it's not flush against the bottom of that hole, it's not seated right.
Okay.
So now that I have a screw on my screwdriver and I'm holding the panel in place,
You're holding, yes.
it's not going to move a lot. I just like to
Right.
make sure it doesn't drop on me.
Sure.
Now I can just start the screw and get that front screw in and tighten it down until it stops. And then I can take my other screw for the back hole and put that one in. Also, while you're doing this, make sure all your wires are in here for the top cover. I just realized, I'm like, oh, did that go down inside? No, it didn't, thank God.
Okay.
So we're going to put that screw back into that mount.
Again, you're not cranking these down hard, right?
No, as soon as they hit a stopping point, that's
Stop. Okay.
Because you'll strip the hole. Now, same thing with this other door, this other panel. This other panel is a little bit easier than the other
Okay.
side. It's just that one spot on that side that's a little bit of a pain to get in. But I'm putting a screw on my screwdriver again. Open this door just a little bit. You don't need to like swing it wide open. The only reason is that that door latch gets in the way of this.
Right.
I'm going to tilt this on its side like we did the other side. Connect the cable until it goes on. And this side's a lot easier. I don't have to worry about lining up too much other than getting these 3 tabs to go into this back panel. And once you lift it up just to a right spot, and then pull up.
It comes right up and it's nice and flush.
And then you see how I'm holding it with my hand here? Now I'm going to take this screwdriver with the screw on it, and I go after the front screw hole like that. And I'm going to tighten it down. And the reason why I go after the front screw mount here is that the back is being held in with tabs on the back panel. So once I get the front screw in, I ain't got to worry about the back hole.
Don't have to hold things anymore.
Yep.
Right.
So I'm going to put that screw into that hole and screw that one in. Bada boom, bada bing. Close the door. We have our side panels and back panel on. Now all we got to do is pop the top on. And that's not going to be real difficult. Again, we wanted to mention earlier to keep track of where your grind setting is in case you needed to do so. We know ours is on the finest grind setting, so I'm going to make sure my knob is all the way to the finest stopping point. If you want, you can always double check with your lid to find out where that is at. Make sure you put it in the same spot that you took it off with. holding the top together like this with my hands on the lids, making sure not to put too much pressure to break the hinge mounts. We're going to take this bean sensor for the lid, put it into that groove right there, and just kind of push it in there. Sometimes it'll click, sometimes it won't, but it will seat in there.
Okay.
Once it's in there, you take your ground, put it onto your ground connection, like that. Then you got your cup tray, little metal prongs on one end or the other, have to match up to the metal connectors on the back of this ribbon thing. So if you have it this way, not gonna work. If you have it this way, it will work.
Okay.
Metal on metal, basically. So once I get it started, like I'm just positioning it into the hole, and I can maneuver it a little bit. When I do that, I can put my finger on the back side of this plastic and push that together.
Okay.
Now that that's in, we're gonna feed this side of the top in over like that, making sure our dial didn't really move on us if we needed to. And now that that's in, just make sure that this cable didn't come through the opening as you're trying to put the top on, because I know that will happen from time to time. Push it in, and then drop this down. And there you go. Now you have to put the 4 screws in here, 2 on either side. Here. Till it stops. Don't over tighten. If you over tighten and you strip the screw and then I get it, I'm not gonna be happy.
Don't make Ted unhappy.
I mean, it just makes it a little bit more difficult. Now that we got those screws in, we can take our piece of tape off the yellow flap that we put on earlier.
So we don't lose that
So we don't lose the spring that it's attached to. And now you can put your water tank in, your bean hopper, plug it in, use your machine, and whatever repair was done is now a success and you can use your machine.
All right, Ted, thanks so much for taking us through all of that.
You're welcome.